Good afternoon, everybody. Our project is titled Simulation and Design of Shell and Tube's Heat Exchanger. Shell and tube heat exchangers are the most widely used heat exchanger types in many different industries, that is, oil and gas, refrigeration, and pharmaceuticals, etc. The question is, why we use computational fluid dynamics CFD in our capstone project? The answer is that CFD is one of the cutting-edge tools that is used recently in industries to maximize the efficiency in design and reduce the cost of the product. The objective and final goal of our capstone project is build a SolidWorks shell and tubes heat exchanger model that resembles the physical prototype in the HCT ADM campus. Run a physical experiment and collect the data results from the physical model, using the flow simulation in SolidWorks to convert the SolidWorks model to a computational domain, using the same boundary conditions that were used in the physical experiment and running our simulation. Compare our numerical results with the experimental results for validation purposes and figure out the final cell count, using different shell and tubes heat exchangers with different flow and thermal conditions to design and optimize new shell and tubes heat exchanger. Conveyed all information and data to the next capstone design project group to build a physical model shell and tubes heat exchanger based on our results. As shown in this slide, the SolidWorks model on the right-hand side resembles an available physical model that exists in the heat transfer lab. Measurements were conducted in the beginning to extract the dimensions and all details of the physical model. The materials of the shell and tube were collected from the instruction manual and entered into our simulation. This slide shows the boundary conditions at the inlet of the hot and cold fluids that are used in our project. The boundary conditions are selected to mimic the real experiment. The shell of heat exchanger is dealt as an adiabatic boundary, that is, no heat transfer is crossing the wall of the shell. The working fluid is water. The material of the tube is SST grade 304. The number of cells is chosen based on running our simulations with many trails of the cell count so that the computational results are not changing significantly with the cell. The final cell count that is used in our project is around 550,000 elements. With this cell count, the numerical model predicts the experiment results within less than 5% of uncertainty. In this slide, we can see the flow animation of the counterflow heat exchanger. In this type of heat exchanger, both cold and hot fluids are flowing in an opposite direction. It is clearly shown in this animation that the hot fluid enters the heat exchanger from the left header and leaves colder from the right header, while the cold fluid enters the exchanger from the top right side and leaves hotter from the top left side. In this animation, the temperature distribution of the wall of tube bundle is also shown. The efficiency of this counterflow exchanger is 14%. This slide shows the animation of a parallel flow heat exchanger. In this type of heat exchanger, both cold and hot fluids are flowing in a parallel direction. It's clearly shown that hot fluid enters the heat exchanger from the left header and leaves colder from the right header, while the cold fluid enters the exchanger from the top left side and leaves hotter from the top right side. The efficiency of this parallel flow is 13.8%, which is less than the counterflow one. Other simulations were carried out using different flow and thermal parameters that are not shown here due to time restriction. Our numerical model predicts the actual result within a difference of less than 5%. Other simulations were run for a larger scale and various flow and thermal conditions. Deliverables of our study will be conveyed to the next capstone design project to build the physical heat exchangers based on our data. Thank you for your listening, and please let us know if you have any questions.